All right, guys, I've got 5 o'clock on the dot. We like to get started on time around here. Welcome. It's Tuesday night, 5 p.m. local here in Bali. It's time for the filter number 94. We've done this 93 times already, and we're going to do it at least one more time. I'm happy to see we've got a full crowd here. This is I'm feeling a little nervous. All right, what is the filter? The filter is, it started off as a Bitcoin meeting, but it kind of morphed into this. Well, there's a lot of other things besides Bitcoin that have come on the scene, Ethereum and other crypto coins. And these discussions tend to bring up larger issues, larger societal things. So when we go through the news, we end up having all kinds of interesting conversations about how human beings interact, how they cooperate or don't cooperate, how money robs us of our ability to be nice to one another, or helps us to be nice to one another, maybe in the future. And so that's what we do. We get together, we look at the headlines. There's always something interesting to talk about, usually some soap opera worthy stuff, some tech nerdy kind of stuff. We try and cover the gamut, and we try to be inclusive. So if we ever get off the rails and get too techie, just raise your hand and we'll stop and bring you along with us. Okay, so today, what have we got for you? We've got, well, I've got a little bit of local news. Had some interesting things going on locally that I'll share with you. We've also got, we're going to talk about India and remittances. That's part of the stories that people post on our Facebook group. We usually go through the stories that people post, and we get together in person to talk about the things that show up there. And then hopefully we'll have time where I'm going to lead us in a discussion of immutability. What does this mean? The title tonight is Never Change Changes Everything. We have a new technology at our disposal, the blockchain. It is this immutable thing, or this non-changing thing, kind of something like you used to chisel something in stone. It's the digital equivalent of chiseling something in stone. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Do we ever want to change the blockchain? Do we ever want to forget things? Let's see what you guys think. All right, let me kick things off here. By the way, there's a little attendance thing. If you guys haven't, just click the box so I can. I'm just trying to get a feel for how many people show up when I have different topics. All right, let's see. Okay, everybody at home should see what we see up top. Never change changes everything. The power of immutability. Let's get started. All right. We are coming to you live from Hubud. Hubud is nice enough to give us a air-conditioned space every week. We really love their support, and you guys are all sitting in air-conditioned comfort based on their generosity. What's going on at Hubud? They're doing a startup weekend. I wanted to just plug this for them quickly. November 18th, beginning at 6. Last year, I was trying to promote the idea that we got to get a Bitcoin project into the startup weekend. This time around, I'm pushing for an Ethereum project or some sort of smart contract. It's interesting, when we did the startup weekend a year ago, when we did have a Bitcoin project in the mix, there was a person that wanted to do smart contracts for insurance for basically people who don't have access to insurance, or there's a lot of insurance fraud that takes place, and wanted to solve that problem. So maybe we can find somebody that wants to do that or something similar at Startup Weekend. It's next month. Get your ideas together and check it out. The other thing that they're doing is something pretty funny. It's well, it's a PG show we have here. F Up Nights. I also think that we could have like a Bitcoin / crypto themed F Up night. Maybe we could get Mark Karpelis to come. I don't know. Maybe there's been lots of screw ups. The screw ups are what make Tuesday night fun, though. So I don't want to like discourage, all of the mayhem that we document every Tuesday. But we could do a whole F Up night on Bitcoin and blockchain for the fun of it. So anyway, that's, when is that? October 13th. All right. So We've got a web presence, bitcoinsinbali.org. This is where we coordinate things. We do a monthly Bitcoin 101, which the next one has not been scheduled yet. But where's my cursor? If you go to this Bitcoin 101 tab on bitcoinsinbali.org, you can see when the next one is. I do have some interesting news, though. The next one is going to be in Bahasa, Indonesia. That is, for those who don't speak Bahasa, that means the next one will be in Indonesian language. And that is October 20th. This is hot off the presses. I just got this banner a couple hours ago from the folks at bitcoin.co.id. And on the 20th of October, down in Sanur, they are going to do another Bitcoin 101 in Indonesian language, which is really exciting. We've had limited success kind of reaching the local folks and generating interest in Bitcoin amongst the Balinese and the Indonesians. So I think this is a good effort and a good step in the right direction. And if you know people, like, I talked to my landlord about paying for electricity with Bitcoin. I mentioned that a few weeks ago, and he was really excited that, maybe he doesn't have to go down to, somewhere, a local shop to buy it. And I don't know, this could be a follow-on kind of thing to send them to. And I encourage you guys, if you know people, or if you've talked to locals that might benefit from this, you can let them know. October 20th is the next one. All right, what else? Recently, I was contacted by the BitGive Foundation. This is an outfit out of the United States, but they want to do their next project in Bali. And it has to do with giving smartphones to people in remote places so that they have access to nurses and doctors who can do remote diagnosis with smartphones. And so they want to pay for as much of this project as they can with Bitcoin. So our first effort is to try and find someone, a local vendor, that will sell us 12 smartphones for Bitcoin. This BitGive Foundation will provide the Bitcoin. We have to provide the vendor who's willing to sell 12 smartphones for Bitcoin. So if anybody knows someone who owns one of these shops, there's a bunch of shops over on that street near the statue. Yes. Maybe we could get someone to go door to door, or maybe we could get the folks from bitcoin.co.id involved to help us find a vendor. I think we will have success doing that, but that was kind of a cool thing to have them reach out to us to help make that happen. So, yay. All right, this is where we hang out when we're not together in person. This is the Facebook group, Bitcoins in Bali Facebook group. We've got almost 1,000 members now. Lots of hang out right there on the Chaplain Ridge. Yes, lots of people have rolled through here over the years, and what the way it works is they'll just post their stories here on the board, and then when we get together, we can talk about it. It's much fun. It's much more fun to argue in person than it is on Facebook, and I'd like to think we can be just as mean to each other in person, but most of the vitriol happens online, and when we get together in person, it's usually a little bit more polite. But anyway, that's the idea. We crowdsource the news here. It's hard enough to keep on top of everything. We need to do it together. It's cooperation. Post your stuff on Facebook, on the Facebook group, and then when we get together in person, we can talk about it. All right, local news. We just did last night. We had Ethereum Skillshare, right? And I think the description scared away a lot of people. Yeah. People thought that it was going to be nerd alert, like severe nerd alert, and people were frightened that they were going to have to look at a command line, like just a blinking cursor. That happens sometimes, but it was a little bit of that. We recorded about over 2 hours of stuff, and there was a little bit of command line nerdiness, but not the whole time. In fact, there were some real gems. Most of the people in this space, that they have all these technology gifts, but they're in this industry because of the incredible things that are possible socially, right? The things that blockchain can do for society. It's not all about the tech, and inevitably you get into these conversations about what it's going to be like when these things are there. I don't know if you guys can see my T-shirt, but I got this Uport T-shirt, right? Identity management, distributed, not owned by any company, but something on the blockchain. These are the kinds of things that are possible. If you could own your own identity, and take it around with you, monetize it, share it, keep it private, and not have to rely on a third party to manage it for you. The implications are amazing. And that's the kind of thing we talked about. Even though we did a little bit of a hands-on stuff, we created our own coin. With Ethereum, you can create a crypto coin with about 10 lines of code, which was pretty amazing to see the power of Ethereum. But then later on in the night, we got philosophical. We even went and had a few beers after the recording turned off. Anyway, that was awesome. Okay, also in local news, we've got the Money and Society Summit coming up. It's the Money and Society. I think there's an online component to this as well, if I'm not mistaken. But sometimes we get Professor Jem Bendel rolling through here, and he's going to be here next December giving this Money and Society Summit. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that. I don't know all the details. I thought maybe Stephen would be here to give us questions.
To the Eventbrite, it describes pretty much what's there.
It does. Yeah. Do you know something about it? Just
it will be what it sounds like, a summit on money and society and the directions that we're taking and are possible to take, and it's a by donation event right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they have a venue here in Ubud, and I think it's a few days. No, it's a day. It's a full day.
Okay, a single day.
Single day. So
all right.
Follow the link to the Eventbrite to register.
Okay, cool.
Great day.
All right, let's get into it, folks. Let's talk about price. We're in Indonesia, and the Indonesian price is for one Bitcoin 7,831,000 or so rupiah for one Bitcoin. Most people are used to thinking about the price in dollars, though. So here's the price in dollars: 611.49. It's been a boring week for Bitcoin price. Kind of a yawner. Yeah, you like boring? Ivor likes boring.
I like boring. Boring is a good time to buy. Boring is a great time.
Well, we talk about this from time to time. Merchants like boring, right? Because if they, you don't want to be a merchant and a hedge fund or some sort of currency speculator, right? So, and you don't want to lose 5% of your value. Maybe like gaining 5% of your value, but if your profit margins are only 5 or 8% and the volatility is 5 or 8%, then it could be a problem. But I don't know. I can't remember, but it's been a long time since we've had 30-day volatility under 1%.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Here's the graph, and I like to look at it versus gold. Which one of these is gold? Is that gold? Here's the gold volatility. So someday maybe Bitcoin will get down to around the gold volatility, and you can see that sometimes they kind of cross over. But that gives you a bit of an idea of how Bitcoin stands versus other things in the market. We've got a ways to go before Bitcoin is really useful as currency and as a store of value that people trust for commerce globally. But
maybe sooner than we think.
Yes. All right. Check this out. This is the transactions per day, and we've looked at this graph before. We're basically kind of bumping along right at 250,000 transactions per day. That might sound like a lot, but it's really not enough to be useful. I think Visa does something like 250,000 transactions per second. So we got a ways to go. Bitcoin scalability is although it sounds like a boring topic, it's quite exciting if you've got $10 billion on the line. And next week, they are having a Scaling Bitcoin conference in Milan, Italy. You gonna go, Andrea? You gonna be there? You gonna fly back for that? Yeah, they're talking a lot about this. In fact, and there was a really good episode on Let's Talk Bitcoin where they talked to one of the developers. He's a guy that has done massively online gaming scalability and tried to represent the side of the argument that that really the block size maybe even is too large at 1 meg. Anybody hold that opinion that they should make smaller blocks? Well, the argument is that if the block size gets larger, then it gets harder and harder to run a node. And so there's centralization in the mining, which means that those people can be co-opted. Right now, money is issued by a single entity, a government, and it happens from time to time where you get a corrupt politician, right? And if there's a single point of power, there's a single point of corruption. It's like a single point of failure. It's like a monoculture in farming. You know, one thing can come along and gunk up the works. So they want to maintain the ability for anybody and everybody to run a node. And when blocks get larger, then it's harder and harder to run a node. So that's their argument. And they're saying that we can build scalability on top of Bitcoin with other layers, right? And if you look at I would encourage you guys those who have kind of followed the technology, you can look at the agenda. They've got the agenda posted here, and you can see the kinds of things they're talking about. What do we got here? The cocktail hour. That doesn't have anything to do with scalability.
But it caught your attention.
Here it looks like the first day is about anonymity or fungibility. Those two things go together. Basically, a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. As soon as you have traceability to people's names, then you start to have blacklists and censorship, and also the money becomes unusable because if you want to spend it, you have to check too many people's blacklists before you do it. So fungibility is a fundamental thing. But this is scaling Bitcoin. So they've got all kinds of scaling solutions that they're going to talk about. Sidechain scaling, Lightning Network. Let's see, what else? Where's that?
By the way, the guy who thinks that the block size is too big also thinks that the Earth is flat. Literally.
Literally.
Yes.
It's not? It's not flat?
Check.
It looks flat.
Proof of flatness.
All right, let's see here. Anyway, check out the Scaling Bitcoin. I think they're going to put it online. Here's the link to they're going to stream it online. So if you really care about Bitcoin scalability, if you think that you've got a horse in the race, not even I'm nerdy enough to have a Scaling Bitcoin watching party, but it did cross my mind, like, hey, let's go to a local bar and watch Scaling. Yeah, you guys aren't interested? Oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
We almost had a having party. Oh, no, we didn't we?
It was a having party.
Yeah, was there a having party?
Yeah.
I was gone for that. I think I was in the air.
Excuse me, it was a happening party, right?
Happening.
All right, guys. So now we're into the stuff that got posted in the Facebook group. And did anybody follow the Wells Fargo deal that happened recently? Basically, they created a bunch of false accounts. Yeah, there was a real fraud, and they kind of blamed the underlings, or they said it was a few bad apples, but it was a real mess. But one of the that happened, I think, a week or two ago, and here we've got this guy, an ex-employee of Wells Fargo, who's saying, "Close your account." It's like this thing went, I don't know, somewhat viral. And what's interesting about banks is if everybody were to close their account, do you know what would happen to, like, if, let's say 8% of the Wells Fargo depositors left?
Yeah, they would have no money.
Right.
Yeah.
They would have to replace capital reserve to cover risk.
Yes, they would have to
They
maybe.
would have to have some capital.
Well, we do have banks have a system where we've got the lender of last resort, right? So that we've got the Federal Reserve. If there's a cash crunch, if there's a run on the bank, then the Federal Reserve comes to the rescue. And banks are supposed to have a reserve ratio. This is something that's regulated by the Federal Reserve. They say you've got to have at least 3% cash or cash equivalents on hand, so that if 3% of the people show up and want their money, then you can service the demand deposits, or what they call them. So if people were to take his advice and close their accounts, and it was any kind of large numbers, it would cause a real problem. I think it would. I don't think they'd go under, because there's so much infrastructure in place to guard against that with lender of last resort services by the Fed. But you can picture a world in the future with Bitcoin where if people actually have their Bitcoin, if there's a way for people to store their own keys on their phone, then banks and banking the way we know it is going to have to be different, right? I suspect that there will still be fractional reserve lending going on in the future, and that there will be people who give their ability, the security of their Bitcoin away to somebody else, right? But there's actually some very interesting things that companies are doing so that empower individuals to control their own funds or control their own keys. And if it became just dead easy for people to do that, it would change the economics of banking, because they wouldn't be able to create money by making loans. Yeah, it's not a thing that is well appreciated by everybody, but all of these changes that are afoot are going to change society and how it works, and it's fun to hypothesize about what the world might be like if everybody closed their account like this guy wants us to do. All right, of course, this brought to mind our friend Johnny Frisch, "Dump Your Bank" song. This is not safe for work, so we're not going to play it, but I encourage you to check that out. We'll post the link. Oh yeah, this is "Dump Your Bank," but you can see the R-rated version is maybe you can figure out what he replaced "dump" with if you use your imagination. All right, this was also posted. I'm always interested when you kind of get like a little bit of mainstream love, and I know that Richard Branson. I think you can buy a ticket for Virgin Galactic on Bitcoin. You can't buy plane tickets on Virgin Airlines yet with Bitcoin, I don't think. But
No,
anyway.
Did you see that? Oh yeah, that's right. There we go.
Yeah,
Did you
Richard
see
Branson.
he's been hosting his thing, the conference on his island?
Yeah. Has he had more than one? Is that what
Two.
he's had two? Yes,
He's
because
had two.
because
That's
our
amazing.
old friend Nick Sullivan from Change Dip was there like maybe a month after he left here, and I was super jealous. He was like, hanging out on the roof with Sir Richard. But it's cool that I don't know. I like Richard Branson. I think he's very enigmatic and interesting, and yeah, I don't know. It's cool when he's in the news talking about Bitcoin. So, all right, remittances. Did you guys take a look at this infographic? Remittances is something that has come up. We've been doing this for 2 years. This little Tuesday night thing we do, and remittances was supposed to be the killer app, right? It was supposed to be the thing. Of course, Western Union is going to be disintermediated by or by Bitcoin or something like it, and we haven't really seen that happen. It's been a little bit more difficult than we thought, but it seems to be coming to fruition. This little infographic. This is put together by a company that's in the remittance business, and I didn't check the figures, but it's plausible what they're describing here. And I just wanted to talk about this last one. This is the most expensive one, since we're bashing Wells Fargo today. It's the Wells Fargo bashing day. $11.55. This is to send $500 from somewhere to India. So that's about 2%. That doesn't sound too bad, but are you guys aware of how big the remittance market is?
It's huge.
It's built, I think, 500 billion, something like that.
How many countries are sending?
I took a look. And there's a really cool interactive website here from Pew.
68 billion.
So that's just to India. So in 2015, $68 billion in remittances was sent back to India. That's a lot of money. Any idea what 2% of $68 billion is?
Do you think Western Union gets 2%?
Yeah, that's 2%. Unless I calculated it wrong, $11.55 out of $500.
That's just the fee. That is not what Western Union gets.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they do a little flim flam on the exchange rate.
Ah, okay. So they get even more than this.
They get quite a lot more.
Well, I did a little calculation because this is actually just a fraction of a percent. This 12 cents to send the same $500 from this ZebPay outfit, but basically the difference is 99%. So it's almost 100% less expensive to use Bitcoin, and the total cost on $68 billion, almost $69 billion, went from 1.5 billion down to 16 million for a whole year. So only, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but only $16 million for all Indians to send the money that they've earned. They've earned that money back to their families who can use it. You know, they make the decision to leave their family and their country and go work someplace else so that they can get a better life. And I don't know, I think that they should keep as much of that money as possible myself. But anyway, anybody know why remittances hasn't really happened yet, or hasn't happened sooner?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think,
Yes.
JP?
It's the challenge with getting money into Bitcoin.
Yeah, in and out of.
You don't get paid in Bitcoin. You
Mhm.
get paid in the currency of whatever country where you're working, and then there's this issue getting it into Bitcoin. Once it's in Bitcoin, I think it's fairly easy to send across the world. But I've been trying to get people in very civilized places to switch from Western Union to Bitcoin, and I can't do it.
Well, you know, the problem really is that they have to switch back and forth, which is one of the reasons why it's so interesting to try and build a Bitcoin economy here. If there was a Balinese person working in Singapore, for example, and they could send Bitcoin back to Bali, and then when it arrived in Bali, they could do everything they want to do with Bitcoin, then you erase all of that
correct
chicanery that happens on the exchange rate and the fees.
But on the remittance side, just purely, you know, right now we're a long way from getting that level of penetration in the community. I had that conversation just yesterday with my driver, and you know what they paid money for is pretty simple stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just talking about local warungs. We're
Yep.
talking about petrol.
Yep.
And
Pulsar.
Pulsa and Listric we can do. We know that.
Yep.
Right?
I think that's the gateway drug.
There's actually not a lot, and because the rest is all cash. You know, their main expenditure here is ceremony. So how do we pay for ceremony in Bitcoin? I don't know.
How can you leave a little bit of Bitcoin on the offering pile? I have to figure that out. Somebody get on that right away. That's
get on it.
top priority.
There's
a company called Save on Send that about a year and a half ago did a long form article on remittances and digital remittances and Bitcoin and all this stuff. They initially looked into using Bitcoin for their own remittances stuff, but they moved away from it eventually. And one of the things that they said that surprised me, and the people worked with thousands of people, is that it was very difficult for them to convince their customers to stop using tellers to send money back home and to simply do it online, or to do a couple of steps through a computer, something very simple, something that automatically will send them 1% of the money that we're sending. So clear, immediate 1% saving, no need to use an esoteric financial instrument like Bitcoin, no 12 steps to secure your money and whatever else, and they still wouldn't do it. Which means that probably the vast majority of people that send remittances are somewhat mentally lazy and don't care that much about the fact that $1 is shaved off or $5 are shaved off. But it's extremely counterintuitive, thinking that these are probably the people that need those $5 the most, but they just don't seem to care very much.
Well, maybe because a lot of remittances are being sent in small chunks over the year. So if you aggregated all of those remittances and only sent them once a year, suddenly, you know, there's $500 in fees.
Yes.
And maybe that would provide the shock value that would make them.
Yeah, because right now they're frogs in a pot.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just.
It's like the poor person's mentality that they just have to live day by day. They end up paying more for most of the. If you don't have money, everything becomes more expensive in a sense, and you become more mentally lazy, or it becomes more difficult to plan long term. There have been a number of studies done on this, and this might fall under the same umbrella of the things that end up costing you more just because you're poor, in a sense.
But I would hesitate to well, I don't know if I would call it full laziness, because they're not exposed to the technology that we're exposed to. I mean, it's easy for me to crack my laptop and log into a website and do something, but if you haven't been exposed to these things, it's quite daunting. I mean, if you've ever tried to teach your grandmother something on the computer, they have the same reaction. It's not necessarily laziness, in my opinion.
Well, it's not the grandmother that sends the remittances; it's the granddaughter that sends to the grandmother.
Right, but they still have the lack of exposure to technology, or I would suggest maybe.
I don't think so, because every Filipino maid everywhere in the world has a smartphone somewhere. So that degree of technical competence is already there.
There's a lot of if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Right? Been doing that for 20 years. Going to the teller, sending them money works.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't want to risk it on something none of their friends do.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
There's.
not mentality. That's not lazy mentality. That's just
Habit.
yeah, habit. Also a habit, exactly.
And
Yeah.
security, you know it works. You already know it works.
Yeah.
It's been proved it works. Yes.
And
Jason?
their peers are doing the same thing over and over again as well.
Even in very poor places where I don't have smartphones, I only have regular phones that I can text. They're transferring credit on the phone credit between them.
Mm-hmm.
So they have figured that out. So there is an exchange of money through phone credit.
Yes.
Now, if there was a global company that said you can have credit and you can transfer that credit internationally, it would be a similar idea for them.
But they have to be able to spend the credit, because as soon as they go back to fiat, you've got all kinds of costs associated with, you've got to keep capital reserves in a country that has a very unstable political situation, and that's where the poorest people are, and then remittances are more expensive there, et cetera.
Yeah, in the case of phone credit, they can only spend their phone credit or send it again to someone else. So it keeps going around.
Right.
They don't spend it on their own need.
Right.
So you can have this recycling.
Well, I heard an idea a few years ago, which was simple. It was that if somebody wants to send money from country A to B and somebody wants to send from B to A, instead of actually sending the money that way and the money that way, nobody sent the money, which is transferred locally within the country.
Yes.
And that way, you would just save all the transfer fees, right?
Yes. I believe transfer, isn't this what TransferWise is doing?
TransferWise.
TransferWise is attempting to.
And it was really brilliant. And I don't understand why people like Western Union, maybe they do, they don't utilize that behind the scenes. So the guys, they still go to the teller. But Western Union does it, or they change it into Bitcoin and change it back to money on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And save money like that, unless the 4% is pure fees and not actual cost.
Well, there aren't a lot of global companies that do this. There's Western Union and MoneyGram, really, right? Is there another?
Revolut.
Yeah.
Are they global,
Brilliant.
large like?
Only UK.
US.
Not quite just the UK, they are expanding. They're very
Okay.
new.
Okay.
But I've got a Revolut card which I can use like a MasterCard anywhere. I can top it up anywhere. No transaction fees, no conversion fees, no cash withdrawal fees. It's totally free to use up to a certain level. And then they put a tiny charge for high usage, which is fair enough.
So how do they make the money?
I'm not entirely sure. I need to research that. And I have read about it, but it was a while ago since I've looked at it.
Probably for those high tickets.
Yeah.
Is so they don't mind. So they're actually not penalizing the poor, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually a good thing.
All right, moving on. Let's see here. Good points all. All right.
68 billion. I wonder what it is for the Philippines.
This is actually, before we went, this is an interactive map. So you can actually just plug in the country. Where's my cursor? See down here, you can plug in a country and you can see all the,
Let's see Philippines.
you want to see? Let's see here. 28 billion?
For that size of country, but check it out. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right. In other news, did everybody celebrate Chinese National Day recently? It was on October 1st. Coincident with that day is the introduction of the Chinese yuan into the basket of currencies that is the IMF's currency, SDR. We've talked about the SDR, or the special drawing rights, lots of times here on Tuesday nights. And now the renminbi, or the Chinese yuan, is about 10%. Does anybody remember? Did anybody about? Yeah, so 10% of the basket, which they only recalibrate every 5 years. So for the next 5 years, the 10% of the value of the SDR will be Chinese renminbi. Anybody understand the significance of that, or have comments on why would we bring up this topic in a Bitcoin meeting? Any ideas? The world monetary system that we have is based on the US dollar. The US dollar has the luxury of being the world's reserve currency. So when countries settle their balance of accounts or they do business with each other, they've got to buy dollars. In fact, the Forex market, in every Forex trade, 87% of the transactions are to and from the dollar. So that creates an artificial demand for the dollar, and it gives us political power in the world that people like China do not like. I don't know if you've seen lately, there's a little bit of tension in the world between the East and the West. South China Sea, there's a few little skirmishes. There's, we and Russia are not getting along too well these days. And these countries are looking for alternatives to the existing system. And the Chinese have been trying to get into this club, the IMF, for a while, and now they're in. And this gives countries another option, and it takes power away from the U.S. dollar, right? So the balance of power is changing. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but the U.S. government has been, we've got the world's reserve currency, but we've been kind of a bad shepherd of it lately because of our own failing economy. Our Federal Reserve has a domestic mandate, but then we've also got our relationship with the other countries in the world, and there is a tendency politically to want to devalue your currency versus other currencies because it makes your exports more attractive. We've been doing that since the financial crisis in 2008. We've quadrupled our money supply, and we've also increased the money supply by holding interest rates artificially low. And that's what's spurring this kind of thing to happen. And it's going to change the global landscape of how money works. So it's a significant thing.
There was another link related to this. I don't know the name of the person, so it was a link on your group, and it said that what really happened was that China created a bond against the SDR itself as an alternative to against any currency in particular. And this was something they were planning since 20 years ago was the last time that was done, and then it didn't happen again because there was no demand for it. And the president of China, something in 2009, proposed this as a white paper, and now they're putting into action just at the same time as they got their SDR. So it wasn't against their own currency they were trying to accomplish. They were trying to accomplish support for creating a bond against SDR in general, without any particular currency.
Right, and you can see why a bond like that would have more integrity. If the Chinese government issues a bond that's denominated in SDRs, then it's got to be paid back in SDRs, which means they cannot devalue their currency too much versus the other basket of currencies, or they can't pay off their loan. So that's a very attractive bond, right? Much more attractive than, say, a German bond. Like maybe you trust the German government, but they're having negative yields now, so maybe the SDR is the answer to that. Of course, there's a crypto answer to this as well. You and I can't use SDRs, right? I can't go to the ATM and say, do I want dollars? No. Do I want rupiah? No, I want SDRs. I can't do that. I can't go to a local warung and pay for my stuff with SDRs. But I can buy a crypto token that's pegged to the SDR. Have you guys heard about this thing called the MakerDAO? No. MakerDAO and the concept of stable coins. Stable coins, using a token of value and smart contracts, hedging and collateral to create a virtual representation of any enumerated thing in the world, right? So we can create our own SDRs.
Oh.
Is that does that make your head spin, or does that make sense to people?
No, they won't.
Is it already created?
It's yeah, not yet.
Please explain.
So what this MakerDAO when in trading, forex trading, you have this concept of makers and takers, and so that's where it got its name, the MakerDAO. And when you make a market, you basically buy an asset from someone that's already selling it at that price. So you create liquidity for any kind of asset. And there are big money people that do this all day every day, and they find a way to make money on the exchanges. And essentially this is how the world works. If you've got a bill denominated in Brazilian real and you need to pay it next month, you want to hedge your risk and volatility of the real versus the dollar. So you rely on futures contracts to do that, and that's done all day, every day by through the forex market. But Maker is an Ethereum company, or a company that's building a product on top of Ethereum that wants to use smart contracts to automatically do this, right? So they keep score in SDRs, and that's how they're able to create an SDR. And then they take other things of real value and pledge them as collateral, and then create a system of smart contracts and futures contracts, so that at any given time, the collateral that they have on hand can cover the spread, right?
Which could be like Parmesan, like we talked about last time, right?
Parmesan spread, I love that. It's delicious.
Parmesan futures. Right?
Is that like hog futures, or?
I think
Yeah?
it's more reliable.
Where's the
definitely
Italian?
More stable.
I got some Parmesan.
Yeah.
That's Parmesan now. Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah.
this was not planned. This is not planned. Do you know this
I
person?
was a plan. I was more.
Straight from Italy, right?
No, let's just forget.
Oh my gosh.
Excuse me. Can we take a 10-minute break? I'm going to eat my Parmesan.
You're gonna sell the future value of that Parmesan.
This has to be
in this moment.
smuggled too. Isn't this illegal? This is contraband.
Goes in my ass.
Okay.
I love it.
It gives it that little extra, something,
PG,
something. Little
PG
je ne sais quoi.
13.
Anyway, guys, we're running out of time. I'm just going to cut to any questions on this MakerDAO. I encourage you to take a look at it, because it's fascinating. It's basically the whole futures and forex market wrapped up into a computer program that takes care of it for you and drives out all of the price. That basically will take all of the profit margins and drive them towards zero, which should make these things a lot easier and less expensive and accessible to everybody.
So does this?
The interesting thing about the MakerDAO is that if there are, I don't know, market makers and takers, there are banks, there are the SEC or regular auditor, the auditing agencies in normal financial markets. MakerDAO somehow streamlines the interest of all these agencies into one, so that the company itself regulates itself, creates the certain conditions for the markets to decide how much leverage you can have, or how much collateral you need to get some of this DAI, or to bet in favor against it. And algorithmically, if they cannot guarantee the price, the ownership of the shares in the MakerDAO are automatically created to go fix the difference between the actual price and the liquidation price, so that they have the best interest to make sure that they have a system in place that works. They cannot get bailed out by somebody else, and by definition, they will go down with the ship if they cannot guarantee the stability of the token.
Nice.
It's fascinating and confusing.
Just the question for me is, like, will this just wipe out, this very giant infrastructure that currently exists
Hopefully.
in this zone?
Yes.
Like, wow, that's a rather large edifice.
It's a DAO. They have token. There's 1 million that have been issued so far. 40% are in the hands of the early adopters and people that bought in. Some other ones are owned by the DAO itself, so that in case something goes wrong, they can be, as I said, issued to people to guarantee the stability of the price of the DAI. And they don't have a product yet, so they're not live, but they hope to be live at some point in the future.
Fabulous. Thank you.
All right, stay tuned.
But is it like an ETF where they actually purchase a sample of all the different products that I can represent, and then they increase the value of that based on that?
I think you need a network effect going on. You need enough people on both sides of the trade. That they're not issuing it themselves. They're just maintaining a market or creating a market where it's possible for the people to be on both sides of each trade.
Oh, so two things, not a spread of things. I thought you were talking about stability through covering all of the alternative places that capital could flow, so that there isn't a place for it to flow anywhere. when it comes to a basket of currencies that you can't exchange between this one and that one because they're all covered in the same basket.
Mhm.
So there's nowhere for the speculation to flow. In the case of stability between currencies, when they create a basket of all the currencies
Like,
money could go,
uh-huh.
and you have a share of that basket, it's
Uh-huh.
stable because
It's stable because it's got the basket, and you've got a world of people that are getting in and out of those currencies that make up the basket, and so the basket itself is more stable than any one thing that's inside of it.
yeah, because of its
like-
inclusiveness. So this is not related to that. It's just two sides of a trade.
Well, that's what maintains the stability, that and the collateral behind it. So if you've got crypto coins that have a value, and you've got SDR that has a nominal value, right? It's a value that's known on the market. You can back those SDR tokens, if you will, with tokens of actual value, crypto coins. And then the crypto coin market and the futures market for any particular crypto coin allows that SDR representation to have a stable value and trade stably. Sorry. Take a look at it's makerdao.io, or I guess it's on GitHub. I'll post the link. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. We didn't get to everything that we wanted to, but let's.
Deutsche Bank, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna. Sorry, guys. I know it's like salacious, but
No, we were good.
yeah, you wanna talk about Deutsche Bank?
Go for it.
All right. Who knows about Deutsche Bank? Yeah. Here's something to know about Deutsche Bank. Here is the last year of their stock price.
Wow.
$27 down to about $10. But what about? I mean, I thought the Germans, like, they have their act together, aren't they? Like very conservative. They what's going on with Deutsche Bank?
Wasn't there a big fallout out of the Brexit? Like, isn't there talk about bank failures around Brexit? Can we have this conversation?
I don't know if this is related to Brexit. I mean, this has been going on for the last year, right? And it has to do with, basically the changing landscape of the banking industry itself, and the inability of banks to make money with loans. You've got an artificially low global interest rate going on. So how do banks make money? By making loans, right? And if you're only getting, 1% on your loans, it's you got to make a lot more loans to get there. Of course, you need a capital reserve to do that. But as long as interest rates are low, people are taking their deposits out. There's a incentive to spend. So you've got a little bit of a death spiral, right? You need, well, in my opinion, you need a market mechanism determining interest rates, because that's how you get balance in a banking system. If there's a lot of savers, then the interest rate goes up and it spurs investment. If there's not very much money available to be loaned, then the interest rate goes down, and there's a market mechanism for money in interest rates. And but the central bankers of the world have said, we know better than the market, and we're going to spur investment by keeping the interest rate low, artificially low. But this makes it hard for banks to make money. And maybe you guys have noticed with your bank, there's more fees, there's more ways you feel like you're getting nickeled and dimed. These are, they don't give you a toaster anymore when you sign up for an account. And
I think I was still a child.
Of course you get fined, right? The Deutsche Bank has got a $14 billion fine from the U.S. government from the last crisis because they made fraudulent loans. I don't know. Things are just a little bit weird, and it's showing up in a traditionally solid bank. And there's, the Germans have already, decided they weren't going to bail out Cyprus, or at least the European representation, where Germany has a lot of power within that organization. They decided not to bail out Cyprus. They bailed them in. They were equally tough with Greece on their banking crisis. Italy's got a crisis going on. I see Andreas stepped out as soon as Italy comes. That's understandable. I wouldn't want to answer for them either. Now the chickens have come home to roost, and we've got problems at Deutsche Bank. And well, They're talking about bailing them out, but
Deutsche Bank.
yeah, what?
I think the Germans will bail out Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, I mean,
As a
all.
German, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, I don't think that, but well, and you wonder like, yes, they probably will. I would, Deutsche Bank stock might be a good thing to buy because they will get bailed out by the central banks, but you wonder when will the central banks run out of steam, and what will happen when that happens? Because Mother Nature has her way, right? And the markets are Mother Nature, and
The markets are us.
yeah,
Yeah,
the markets are us. Power to the people.
Funny thing is, everybody thinks Deutsche Bank is a Deutsche Bank. It's not a German bank anymore. The shareholders are super international, but everybody thinks still.
But it says Deutsch.
It says that's the name.
Doesn't it say
It's
the
not
Federal
what it actually
Reserve?
is.
Yes, it says
And,
the Federal Reserve.
They will bail them out because no one in the world financial system can risk that Deutsche Bank collapses, because that will mean the end of the financial system.
Right, just like 2008, right? Lehman.
Worse
Well, they
than
let
that.
Lehman go, but
It
they
will be
bailed.
worse.
Yeah.
So no one will
So-
go to that risk.
So why are we here again? Why are we having these problems again? Didn't we learn a lesson in 2008? What's going on here?
Well, actually, what we see there are people who interpret, especially this fine thing, which comes from America, as a war, an economic war between America and Europe. There were these fines against Apple, paying
Yes.
taxes,
Yeah.
and it's their things shaking up each other. So it's difficult, and it creates trouble in Germany. Definitely, it does. It creates trouble for the Germans within the European Union, and that's what the Americans like.
Yes. Yes. Well said. I agree. And it's, well, who knows what's going to happen? The whole edifice could change. This has happened in the past. The whole global monetary system does change from time to time, where they have a different scheme and how it works. We talked about the SDR earlier, and it could have something to do with the SDR kind of playing a role in some new system. The IMF has a clean balance sheet. They could loan trillions of dollars to governments all over the world and basically print SDRs. An SDR is a fiat currency, and they don't have a maxed out balance sheet like the central banks around the world. It could be like a global central bank. So stay tuned. All right, let's see here. Now can we talk about what we came here for? Or? We're gonna have mutiny? Okay, what we're talking about today is immutability, right? The blockchain is supposedly something where we're just writing in stone, right? It's like the 10 Commandments, or the cuneiform on the walls in Cairo. Is that cuneiform? Or hieroglyphics?
Hieroglyphics.
What's cuneiform?
That's the,
Great.
Do they write cuneiform on blocks of?
that's earlier.
Okay. Anyway,
That's the
I
beginning.
digress. Bitcoin was supposed to be the first real digital thing, and blockchains are also attempting to be something real in the virtual world, right? Through cryptography and through a chain of blocks that have a cryptographic relationship to one another. They create a quote unquote immutable record, right? Or it's supposed to be immutable, right? It's like a big piece of paper and you write it in pen and there's no eraser. That's what a blockchain is supposed to be, right? And there was a talk recently posted by our man, Andreas Antonopoulos. There he is. That kind of got a lot of, a lot of Reddit chatter and a lot of people talking about, what is immutability and what does it mean? There was an article by Accenture saying that immutability is bad. We've got this some really fun flame wars on Twitter, like just arguing about these things. This woman, finally, can we please ban the term immutable from descriptions of the blockchain? The risk assessments based on it are flawed. So you got people that are saying immutability is bad, and I'd like to know what the people in the room think. Should you be able to change a blockchain, or should the blockchain be the blockchain be the blockchain? I know that there are some Ethereum folks in the room, or at least people who have paid attention to the fork in Ethereum. The Ethereum is a blockchain, and they wrote a contract that was executed on that blockchain, and it ended up being a bad idea. The contracts that were on the blockchain were had unintended consequences, and the community at large decided to mutate the blockchain, so it was not immutable. And I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that we should have some sort of governance mechanism that allows a blockchain to be changed, or do you think that should take place on another layer on top of the blockchain? You know, you can. There's all kinds of use cases for blockchains, right? Money was the first use case, but they're talking about doing identity on the blockchain, land title. You know, all of these things where, you know, if I rob a bank and they can associate that with my identity, like, do I want to be known as a bank robber for the rest of my life? You know,
For me, the question is it about immutability? We're dealing with trust, right? So how do we migrate from the old models of trust, which have failed us completely, to a new one and utilize technology to do that? The question for me is it really about immutability or is it about transparency? Like, which is it that we're really having the argument about?
well, you know, I think blockchains have to be transparent if they're. I mean, you can store.
What
You can.
about that example of, okay, you put something on there that shouldn't have been on there, and you don't want it there for public to see forever, so we should erase that one. You know, how do we feel about that?
So you could have a big blockchains that solve that problem, and there would, like the Monero blockchain. And as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, the long-term plans for Ethereum are also to have a perfect anonymity on it, but very deep down the line after Casper or after everything else. I think that what she's arguing for is the capacity to censor parts of certain transactions or certain dislikable contracts that can be written on them.
Yeah, like I didn't actually want to send Andrea 10 Bitcoins. I wanted to send him 1, and now he won't give me 9 back. All I got is a piece of cheese.
No, I think it's more about the toilet seat that got paid for by your taxes.
Oh yeah.
They don't want you to know that's what it paid for, and they'd like to really discount.
Well, but a lot of these things, the blockchain depends on a quote unquote consensus reality, right? A shared version of reality, especially when you're talking about Ethereum, because you've got a persistence layer. So every node on the Ethereum network needs to evaluate some piece of data, and that data needs to be the same on every Ethereum node. And if that piece of data is a piece of child pornography, does that mean that we can't go back and take it out? Or
Yeah, this is the same question. Is it really about immutability?
but if you have mutability, then you've got censorship opportunity.
Correct.
Right? So we can't have it both ways, right?
Correct.
So
So is there another way is the question. Or are we willing to live with, you know, just a certain amount of elbow room in terms of, yes, it's mostly it has integrity.
well, the question also becomes if anything that is possible will be done. You know, like as soon as you know how to clone somebody, you know somebody's going to clone something, like somebody somewhere. If you have some place somewhere where there's immutable something, are they going to go there, and is the cat out of the bag? Is Pandora out of the box?
Depends on the cost. I mean, we should have blown ourselves up 100 times already, and we haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some holding us back, right? Yeah. So how would that apply here? Like,
well, the thing is that there's also utility in immutability, right? Some of these things depend on the immutability.
well, that was, I think, the original premise of Bitcoin, right? Let us actually create something to peg our currency to that does not change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what we wanted, you know, and so we can have something finally that we can rely on that's more reliable than any other index we've ever had. I mean, that was actually the special application as I understood it.
Well, I mean, are you talking about value, or are you talking about immutability of information?
It's really more about the value of the asset. Yeah.
Okay, because I think there's two different issues. There's the immutability of the data that's on the blockchain, and then there's the stability of a token of value based on the fact that lots and lots of people use it.
And it's because, I mean, it's the first application of this idea, and it's a really sensible one to have it be, you know, Bitcoin that is both, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, with Bitcoin is a very simple use case. It's a single ledger. There's single values. The only persistence for Bitcoin is who owns what Bitcoin. And when you enter into Ethereum, which is also a blockchain application, it's got a lot more to it. You're storing a lot more than just single values. You might store the code that hashes, creates a hash, right? So there's computing power, there's persistence, there's all kinds of.
Store a song, or you might store a record of a marriage, or.
But even those are atomic. Even those are atomic. But with Ethereum, you're storing code logic, the logic to calculate things, which is like a whole. I think there's a whole level of complexity there that maybe we don't fully understand. Because you're not storing individual values. You're not saying this land title used to belong to this guy, but now belongs to that guy, and it's an atomic thing that moves. With Ethereum, you're encapsulating logic, and logic is stored on the blockchain, and the execution of that logic is done by every node on the Ethereum network. And if there's someone here in Ethereum that could talk about this, I'd be open to it, because I think. I'd be curious how much does Ethereum use cases rely on immutability, and is that I mean, we've already had an instance where we had to go back and change the blockchain, but is that like a one-off, or are they gonna build governance for that to happen in the future because immutability is bad?
It's so interesting because go ahead.
Yeah, well, Ethereum, really about setting your contracts, set the expectation of what's going to happen. It's not that you can't have change, because you can basically put mechanisms in those contracts for ways to change them. So basically,
governance.
Governance or other models of that. We don't know what's best.
Mm-hmm.
That was one example, and already the community's learned a lot of things from that they can put other mechanisms into that to change it, or have some forms of fail safes or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So part of this best practice and setting the expectations, and someone will change it, you got a governance model, or maybe some other backup plan for everything that could go wrong.
Right.
I love this idea. This is so great. Like, if you could create a system where the community learns what it actually wants in each application, and then you change as you go until you arrive at what actually works for the specific application, that's brilliant.
Right.
Because it's very different to try and do a currency and reputation. They're totally different animals, right? And have different things going on. That's really cool.
Jason.
I don't understand the technical side of the layers, but I just want to put it in context just so we can compare, and then maybe I can get an understanding of the answer. Let's say the DNS records have the current edit, and there are certain places you go to get the latest DNS record.
Yes.
And it's spread around, but there's a history to it. And they don't change the history. The history is the change. Right? And let's say Wikipedia's got the current edit, and there's the history of it and all the comments of who did what and when and why. But it's just the history, and you've got the current edit. Is blockchain just the record, and then there's software like Ethereum that is about what you do with it, and it could have a history in the blockchain that continues.
Mm-hmm.
What's really the question of keeping a history of a record of changes?
You're right about that. That is what a blockchain is. But there are, there's a temporal component to a blockchain, right? There's if something gets into a block and then there's 10 more blocks, all of those blocks relate back to that original thing. So if somehow Andrea stole Bitcoin from me, and that happened in this block, and then we realize that 10 blocks later, I've got to recalculate everything that happened between then and now in order to revise that, right? So I can't really change it, unless I get some sort of consensus in the entire community, like what happened with Ethereum and the DAO, where the entire community said, we are going to revise history. We're going to go back in time in the blockchain and say, from this particular block, it didn't happen. We're going to go back and change it, and that's why we now have Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, because some people said, well, we're going to, we don't believe philosophically in that change, so we're going to keep building on the old blockchain. And then the guys who wanted to revise history said, oh, there's a new blockchain. So there's two versions of reality, one where the money was stolen and one where the where it wasn't.
Kind of like life.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Doesn't it really depend on the ultimate purpose of it?
Yeah, say a little bit more.
Well, I'm just thinking back to the early days of Empire Avenue. I don't know whether you got involved with Empire Avenue. It was a social media game. And basically, you developed your own exchange rate, so your value in Eves. I think the currency was Eves. So if you had a lot of trust in your network, if you had a good reputation in your network, if you had authenticity, plausibility, etc., people would buy shares in your profile, in your value, which would increase your exchange rate. It would increase your monetary value in
Right.
using
Yes.
Eves as an exchange rate. And what we discovered was that the way that currency worked in the community replicated many elements of financial institutions, and you'd have false inflation, you'd have forced inflation, you'd have people playing the game because they wanted to up their value. You had people who were genuine and who were authentic, but you could actually see through the history of their engagement and interactions with people how their value actually increased. So you could then make an educated judgment as to whether you wanted to invest in them or not.
Yes.
And that gave you a currency that you could then spend elsewhere. This is before the days when it turned it into a rather silly game, in my opinion. But it was very interesting just watching that process, watching the growth, and ultimately the question then we came up with is what was the ultimate purpose of it?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got that need for that track record and that history, then actually you don't want to be creating a new blockchain. You want to be able to have that.
Okay, so let's explore that a little bit. Let's say that identity is the use case.
Yeah.
Right. And I've got my identity, and I'm a good citizen. I'm nice. I help little old ladies cross the street. I pay my bills on time, and somehow I have my identity stolen, and somebody, a bad actor comes along and uses my good identity to do all kinds of terrible things, take out loans, right? Like basically ruin my identity before I have a chance to fix it. Now then, do we want to go back and take those things off my record once I retrieve my identity, or do we want to somehow, do I have to explain myself that somebody stole my identity and I wasn't just in Vegas on a bender after being good for too long?
Or do you have an external body that actually polices it? Because that kind of thing happens on Facebook every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and in that case, you have Facebook as arbiter.
Yeah.
And if you can't get, Zuckerberg on the phone, what are you going to do? Because we're talking about a decentralized version of this. I mean, we're talking about this just existing, right? This is what they're trying to do. I mean, it's fascinating when that game that you described, they probably had algorithms like very sophisticated. But they're doing it in a centralized way. They can go and update the code. They can make changes. They can, restore somebody's identity. If you're doing it in a way that has no owner, or in a way that people can service their own identity, basically we want to give people the ability to keep their own identity.
That is happening to a certain extent, because what's happening with places like Facebook, and this happened with Empire Avenue, was that if the community, so if you built a trust network and your community around you could see that either your profile or a clone profile was actually mimicking you and giving you a bad reputation, it became self-policing by the community. And the organization, Facebook or Empire Avenue, then had to take notice if they had lots of people saying, excuse me, but this profile's not right. So instead of being, because in the society we are now, we're dependent on police, we're dependent on government, we're dependent on authority organizations that are, they're up there somewhere. They're not connected to the common populace, whereas these things are. And that ability to create that openness is actually growing. It's growing quite a lot.
And there's a problem to do, had his name up before, the question of reputation and transparency of reputation. He was against the identity case, because he would say, he was concerned about a problem where people create bots. They create a false peer review. They basically create, a false consensus that could replicate lots of people on a network and influence the trust. And
Well, this is what's referred to in computer science as a Sybil attack,
Yes,
or like Sybil was some sort of schizophrenic multi-personality person from way back when, and therefore they've adopted her name for this thing where people create multiple personalities for themselves. And there's all kinds of research on how to avoid this phenomenon, because we really do need to identify individual people. There's the utility in that, but it's difficult. I think Facebook actually did it kind of in a low-tech way at the beginning by you had to have like a harvard.edu email. So it was impossible for someone who was not a person. I mean, very difficult for someone to get that. So you knew that you were dealing with real people. But I think Facebook has a problem with lots and lots of false users now. I actually see them every day trying to post ads in the Bitcoins in Bali group, for the next get rich quick Bitcoin mining MLM OneCoin scheme. But yeah.
I don't know how the 1.0 version of Ubud would work, but this would be already a feature. But since you can have a variety of attestations onto your profile, and there can be a social weight given by extensive verification through other individuals, through interactions, for example, through your eBay profile, through all the things you've done in the past. Without disclosing exactly what you have done in the past to the people that want to see if you're a real person or not, or if you're civil, if you're a real human being, it's sufficiently easy to have some kind of weighted score behind you that guarantees that this identity has, for example, received a birth certificate attestation for the government of its country. And you cannot have 1,000 Sibils with 1,000 different birth certificate attestation from the government. Or that this person this profile has been operating for a number of years, has interacted with several hundred other profiles without saying exactly what. Some of these transactions were economic in nature. They were not part of a small network of people. They're all kind of testing each other in a vicious circle. So there are ways to somewhat demonstrate that sufficiently for a large number of use cases. Especially those which do not require for you to have perfect certainty that that person is actually a person. So with the mechanism that Ubud has, it should be pretty easy to weed out symbols, even if you can theoretically generate 1,000 different identities for yourself. Because an identity was created yesterday and interacted with nobody. It's just as good as some guy walking down the street and say, "Give me $1 million and I will."
So
give me $1, give me $1 million.
Andrea mentioned the inclusive problem is that people who aren't already engaged in the online world will have difficulty getting on. People who are late to the party will have more challenge than people who are already networked. That was his argument about the difficulty of the identity.
Right.
Andreas
the talk. He's right here. You can. Yes. So for those of you who haven't caught on, Uport is one of the companies that is tackling this use case, the identity use case in the ethosphere, or on the Ethereum platform, basically creating an identity management system that has no owner. There's no centralized entity like the video game that you mentioned, or Facebook, that can arbitrate identity. They have to build it into logic and deploy it on the Ethereum network, and kind of hope that they get it right. But what's interesting about what they've done is they've added a social component, right? So your password reset is dependent on maybe the 5 or 10 people closest to you saying, yes, that's Parag. Yes, that's Parag. Yes, that's Parag. Okay, we're going to change your key because we can all identify you as Parag, and you're identifying that your key was lost, and we can switch it over. But there's still a blockchain that has that history, right? And I don't know, that's the kind of philosophical question on the table is, do we go back and rearrange the blockchain, or do we always have that record? And I'll just introduce, we've got to wrap things up because we're already 15 minutes over, but I'll just plant a few seeds here, seeds for thought. Europe's got this concept of right to be forgotten, which is kind of the Jean Valjean law. If you've ever read Les Miserables, you know that Jean Valjean stole a loaf of bread, and then when he got out of prison, he couldn't get a job, so he adopted an alias and reformed his life. And anyway, the European Union has come up with this concept of the right to be forgotten. But if you've got an immutable blockchain, does that mean you're really never forgotten? I don't know. Other things, revenge porn. This is like, do you guys know what this is? You break up with your girlfriend, you're all mad, and you take like pictures that they sent you and put them up on the internet in order to get back at them. And then they have all these lawsuits to get things taken down, and it's a real mess. It's an ugly side of human behavior. But if you have immutable databases that are just living in the wild, does that mean you can't take down a picture of your you know, your wife or something from 3 years ago? I don't know. Assassination markets. Are you guys aware of what an assassination market is? Let's say that it's like crowdfunding for people you don't like to have them knocked off. So you could have a theoretically you could have a computer program that people could pledge cryptocurrency, and you could fill up this bounty on someone's death. And as soon as somebody dies, then the payout goes out, and this is all done programmatically, right? So this piece of code, if there's an Ethereum network with an immutable blockchain, and there's code out there that can collect money, name a person, and pay out money if something happens, like someone gets assassinated, does that mean that an assassination market could exist on the internet? And does an immutable blockchain allow that to happen?
Yes.
Right. Well, I think
No way.
I want you guys to think about it. Maybe we can have another conversation about it. But I've got to wrap things up. If you want to check us out on Facebook, please join the Bitcoins in Bali Facebook group. Has everybody signed in? I do try to keep in touch with everybody, and I do try to keep a count of people who show up. So if you haven't already, please just sign up for our, so we can keep in touch with you via email, and check out our YouTube channel. All the stuff, all the times that we get together on these Tuesday nights, it goes right up on YouTube. All the people that have come to Bali and now they're far flung all over the world, they can still tune in. Please check out our YouTube channel and subscribe. There's stuff that happens even when we're not all together. So check that out. So that's all we got for tonight, folks. Thanks for participating. I think it was a great discussion. As always, we have super smart people in the room, and it was a lot of fun. I think we'll do it at least one more time. You guys want to do it again next week? Yeah? All right. We'll see you again next week. Same time, same channel. Thanks for coming tonight, guys.